Hey there, welcome to another DFSR NBA Bootcamp video. This is James Davis, and today I'm excited to talk to you about creating winning big tournament lineups. Now, big tournament lineups are probably the most difficult thing to make when it comes to the NBA landscape, where cash games are probably the most straightforward. Big tournament lineups might be the most difficult. In some other sports, it's oftentimes pretty easy. Like in Major League Baseball, you stack a bunch of hitters in the middle of the order against a bad pitcher, you're probably doing well. You grab a few players from the Coors game, you take a high strikeout pitcher, and you call it a day. But prioritizing the upside in the NBA, I find to be quite a bit more nuanced. So how do we do it? Well, the first thing we key in on is not going to be dissimilar from other sports. We want to look at games that have a high projected total in terms of Vegas, where the teams play at a pretty high pace. Now, note that this means that individual teams that always play a high pace, say the Golden State Warriors, they're not really going to get a bump from being in a high total game just on their own, because their prices are going to tend to be in line with the high totals that you'll see. And so you'll see a lot of teams that have been playing at the same fast pace all season long. Even if they're in the games with the highest totals, they might not be the best bet for big tournament lineups, simply because the price already accounts for it. But when they're going up against a team that plays a disproportionately fast pace, let's say the Warriors are now playing against the Suns, now we're in the case where both teams are getting a pace-up multiplier in our projection system, and might be due not just to score the normal high totals that we're accustomed to, but go even further than that. And there's another key component to this as well. We're looking for high totals in a fast-paced game, but oftentimes we're going to get more upside in a game that rates to stay close. This is because both teams will tend to stick to their normal game plan, just trying to go up and score whenever they have the opportunity, rather than what they might do when they're up 8 to 10 points late in the fourth quarter, which is just kind of slow things down and take a shot later in the clock. And this also ignores probably the most common feature to all big tournament winning lineups, which is games going to overtime. If you have a game that goes to overtime, all of a sudden those players are going to add, an extra 20% of minutes or 40% of their minutes. In some cases, should it go to double overtime. And if you don't have any players in that game, it's awfully tough to win a big tournament. This brings me to the next point, which is, you have those good players, but ultimately, if everyone plays all the same players, then everyone's just going to tie, right? And while nobody ever winds up being 100% owned, maybe outside of a 2-game slate where there's a clear injury play or something, for the most part, when you're looking at these huge big tournaments, like say it's a Wednesday night slate, 10 games on the evening slate, and you're trying to figure out how you can stand out from the field in that case, well, you also need to think about the potential ownership of the players involved. Now, the reason for this is pretty straightforward. If you get Devin Booker at 3% ownership and he winds up absolutely going off, say in a peculiar matchup against the Spurs or something, then you're going to be only competing essentially with 3% of the field, right? If he has one of those nights where he scores 65 points on an $8,000 salary, it's going to be tough for your competitors to overcome that. So having separation from the field in that regard can be pretty beneficial. Now, I don't think you need to go overboard. I don't think all of your plays need to be 2% owned, but I think having a couple of key separation guys alongside of those rather obvious plays, the guys filling in for an injured player or who rate to have more usage because the star guy just got traded, you want those guys, but I think having a couple people who rate to be lower owned can be very important. But I think by far the most important thing is to understand, the last 2 points kind of come together here, which is how to make your lineup tell a story. Now, in the fourth bullet point, I asked the question, how important is stacking? I think it's absolutely essential to creating winning big tournament lineups. And the reason it's even more crucial in basketball than some of the other sports is that there are so many events in basketball that benefit everyone involved. If I dribble the ball down the court, pass to someone that shoots a three-pointer and makes it, well, that's a 4.5-point play. If I get a block and then you get the rebound, you see where this is headed, right? A lot of times players on the same team, if that team is doing well, many of them will do well together. And likewise, for big tournaments, I really love to take both sides of a game. And the reason for that is simple. Games that go to overtime are absolutely what make or break you. So say there's a game where the Nuggets are going up against the Trailblazers. Maybe it doesn't have the highest total, but it's a pick'em or a 1-point spread either way. That game is going to be far more likely to go to overtime than a game where the Warriors are favored by 13.5 over the Suns, right? And so even though the Suns-Warriors game might have a higher projected total, remember that Vegas is just trying to give you essentially an average or a median of what might happen if these teams played each other 15 times. They are not accounting for that odd time where one of the teams just shoots hot and carries into overtime and so on. They're just trying to say, how can we get even money on both sides of this line? So when I'm creating a big tournament lineup, I want it to tell a story, something like this, right? Let's say I'm stacking both sides of that Nuggets and Trailblazers game. The story I'm telling myself is, if this game stays close and it goes to overtime, here are the players that are going to have performed well. Likewise, a story your lineup can tell might be something like, hey, the Warriors are playing the Suns. I think it's going to be a blowout, and that's why I'm playing these backup guys. They're only 3,500 on the Warriors because I think that they'll fill in and get a disproportionate amount of run than usual. And likewise, I think the Suns' three-point shooters are going to get a disproportionate opportunity to shoot more shots because they're going to be in catch-up mode the whole time. The big thing with these big tournament contests is remembering that the prizes are extremely top-heavy. It's very unrewarding to continually bubble into the cash and double your money, but be missing the cash all the other times. Far better is to give yourself that boom or bust opportunity so that when everything comes out on the wash, you happen to guess right on the game that goes to overtime, or you happen to fill in those high separation plays or those cheap punt plays that some people don't believe in because that guy's occasionally erratic. That can be your absolute best friend. And as always, if you don't want to go through all the hassle of figuring this out on your own, you can use the DFSR Pro Tool over at dfsr.com/deals. I showed you this in the last video, but you can lock players, you can exclude them. For big tournaments, we have additional features like the ability to stack multiple teams. You can also exclude given games and go from there. Obviously, on the first 2 game slate of the season, that might be difficult, but the thing we always guarantee is that you can head on over there, even on short on time, click optimize, and create tons of lineups for you to pick from, or to just send them all in, which is often a good play in those shorter contests. So thanks a lot, guys, for joining me on this second installment of the DFSR NBA Bootcamp, and we'll catch you next time.